My name is Cassie, and I grew up in a house where love was measured in achievements. My brother Alex was the pride of my parents, an academic prodigy, a shining intellect. He was sharp but blunt. He didn't mince words, and my parents were always laughing off his poor behavior as being a quirky side effect of being a child genius. I was the athlete, the runner, the one who could only win through sweat and pain. To my parents, his success was inevitable. Mine, a hobby at best, a waste of time at worst. I never gave up, though. I had dreams bigger than anyone could imagine. I wanted to run for my country, cross the finish line, and get the Olympic gold medal 10 times over. Then, I wanted to train others to achieve what I did. My parents never saw my dreams as real. To them, only education mattered, and sports were a waste of time. They never bought or helped me get anything related to sports. When I grow up, I want to be an Olympic champion.
Don't be ridiculous, Cassandra. You have to dedicate yourself to your schoolwork, just like your brother. Otherwise, you'll never achieve anything but bringing shame on this family. And this is why I don't tell people we're related. I am embarrassed to have genes in common with such a Neanderthal.
You're just bitter that you can't run a mile, Alex, and everyone knows it.
How on earth did you grow up to be so rude? Go to your room, and while you're there, study. Maybe if you're lucky, something will go in, and you'll finally do something we can care about.
Dad, I come second in all of my classes and first in all of my sports events.
Second is first to last, Cassie. You know that. Now don't embarrass me further. Get out of my sight.
From an early age, I learned how to survive without their support. Alex had every tutor, every academic summer camp, every opportunity they could buy. I worked part-time jobs to afford my running shoes, my gear, my training fees. They thought I'd break, but all they did was make me stronger.
Cassie, you're fired.
What? No. Why?
Your parents called and told us you've been stealing from the tip jar.
We don't have a tip jar, sir.
No, but they know you've been stealing from somewhere, so I have to let you go. And to think you were such a good employee all these years.
Please don't fire me, sir. Please. I'm reaching the end of life on my sneakers and I need to buy more.
You should have thought of that before you stole from me.
I didn't steal. It didn't make a difference. I went home that night, furious. You told my boss I was stealing?
Of course not. Where would you have gotten that idea?
He told me you called and said I was stealing from the tip jar.
Why would you do that?
I didn't. It was a lie. I needed that job, Dad. It's the only way I can buy new running shoes.
I called them. You're wasting your money on running junk when you should be studying. Right, Dad? Right. Next time, think, Cassie. Stop bringing so much shame on our family.
I was utterly furious, but my dad wasn't going to say anything. I knew he was happy to let it slide because Alex was the golden child and I was the nuisance. The differences in how we were treated were always there, but the first time I truly saw it for what it was happened when I was 16. I had trained for months to qualify for the state championships in track. I woke up early, stretched, packed my bag, and waited for my parents. They had promised to drop me off on the way to Alex's academic decathlon meet. At 7 a.m., I heard Alex groaning from his room. He had overslept and missed the school bus. My parents panicked.
Alex, sweetie, don't worry. We'll drive you there. We'll get you settled in your hotel room.
Mom, what about me?
What about you? Make your own way there.
The stadium is literally on the way.
Cassie, we don't have time for this. You should have planned better. Find your own where there. You run, don't you?
You said you were going to take me.
You're wasting my time, Cassie.
And so I ran, 5 miles to the stadium, barely making it to the starting line. I was exhausted, but I still won my event. When I called them to tell them, they didn't answer. They were too busy celebrating Alex's third-place finish. The next day, we were all at home, and I showed them my trophy. You missed my race again, but look, I won first place.
My gosh, Cassandra, what on earth has possessed you to laugh at your brother in such a way? Third place is something to be proud of too, you know.
Honestly, I never knew we'd raise someone so nasty. Go to your room and give that trophy here. It's your brother's now.
For the first time in a long time, I crawled under the covers of my duvet and cried. I just wished my parents would care a little more about me. I hadn't realized I was asking for so much. I had wanted to share something I was proud of. And not only was I shot down, the proof of that pride was lost. Several months later, it was time for us to graduate. Because we were born 9 months apart, but him in the late summer and me in mid-spring, so we were in the same school year. I was always second in class, but my extracurriculars showed more accomplishments. He was in debate, I was in track, he was in the decathlon, and I was on the soccer team. I was on student body president, and he quit student council when he didn't win. Ultimately, my high school career had been more successful than his, in both how much we did and how often we won. I never placed second, he rarely placed first. When the school prepared to announce the nomination for the valedictorian, my parents brought out 3 champagne glasses, one for each of them, and one for Alex. I watched from the doorway as the principal announced on livestream that I had won. I was thrilled. Finally, something undeniable, something my parents would have to see.
She must have bribed him.
What disgusting things have you been doing with your principal for him to have chosen you over Alex?
I walked away, stunned. The next month, when giving my valedictorian speech, I noticed that my parents were nowhere to be seen. They showed up only after I stepped off of the stage. Later that evening, I went out for dinner with my soccer team. Most of us were graduating, and the coach wanted to celebrate a perfect 3 years. We won every game. We were champions. During the dinner, it started to rain. My friends all left, and I stood in the rain waiting for my parents to come pick me up after they promised they would. They never showed up. Instead, they took Alex out to dinner to celebrate his potential. It was pitch dark in the middle of a storm, and the only way I could get home was by running. When I arrived, my dad shouted at me for dripping on the carpet. That was the moment I realized I would never be enough for them, not unless I became something more than Alex could ever dream to be. The next day, I finally said what was on my mind. You didn't come to my valedictorian speech. I think you've taken this favoritism too far. I'm worth your attention too, Mom.
Cassie, you need to understand. We didn't want Alex to feel left out.
So you boycotted my speech? For him?
He's going through a rough time. You don't need us the way he does.
You wouldn't know what I needed if it hit you in the face, Dad. I needed you to celebrate my wins the way you celebrated his. I needed you to drop me off at run meets and pick me up after dinners with my team. I needed you to at least pretend you cared about me, but obviously that was too much. At 18, they kicked me out, told me I needed to be independent. They let Alex stay. He got a full ride, not because of scholarships, but because my parents paid his way. I worked for mine. That first Christmas break, I spent alone. Every call I made over the holidays went unanswered. So I stopped calling. I had friends, and when they realized I was estranged from my family, they started inviting me to spend time with theirs.
Honestly, Cassie, if anyone fails to realize how amazing you are, that's their loss. Come spend Christmas with my family.
Thank you. You're the best. I threw myself into my studies. I pushed myself beyond what I thought was humanly possible. I became a psychologist by day, a runner by night, and I did the impossible. I made it to the Olympics. I won gold. I called my parents. They didn't answer. I called Alex. Voicemail. The reporters asked me who I wanted to thank. I looked into the camera and said, myself. Years later, I went to visit Alex. He had become a businessman, just like my parents had always wanted. He had the suits, the office, the money, but he was still the same spoiled, selfish child. He complained the entire time I was there, how hard his job was, how I didn't understand real work, how lucky I was. Lucky? I worked for everything I have.
Oh, please. You got attention for running fast. That's not a real achievement.
We argued for an hour before I finally asked him to drive me to the bus station. As we drove, Alex was still ranting, his reckless speeding making me uneasy. He was showing off his new supercar, bragging about how fast he could drive. Then, he pulled out his phone and started recording a video for TikTok. Then, at an intersection, it happened. A child. Alex hit him. I gasped, reaching for the door handle. Alex, we need to call an ambulance.
No, we don't.
We got out of the car and saw the child lying motionless. I turned to Alex, my voice shaking. We need to rush him to the hospital. Instead, Alex panicked, then ran. He jumped back into his car, hit the gas, and sped away. As he took off, his phone slipped from his hand and fell onto the pavement. I went straight to the police. Meanwhile, Alex rushed home to tell our parents what had happened. By the time I got to the station, they had already tried to pin it on me. I sat in the interrogation room as the officers told me my own parents had accused me of murder. I laughed. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out Alex's phone, and placed it on the table. Watch this. It was the TikTok video of him running over the kid. The trial was brutal. My parents threw every dollar they had into his defense. Bribes, lawyers, corruption. But the truth was stronger. Alex was sentenced to life. And the police locked up my parents for a few months for trying to cover up for their son and for initially trying to blame me for it. While they were in prison, they lost everything trying to save him. Their money, their business, their status. In the process, I bought their house. Just to twist the knife deeper, I even sent them pictures of me standing in front of it while they were in prison. After serving their time, word had spread, and their reputation was shattered. No one would hire them. They were outcasts. With no other options, they ended up working at a gas station. One day, I drove up in my luxury car and pulled into the station where they worked. I rolled down my window and smirked. "Fill it up." As he focused on the task, I discreetly slipped an expensive piece of jewelry into his pocket. A few hours after leaving, I returned, furious. My jewelry is missing. The police searched them and found it in my dad's pocket. And just like that, they were both fired. Time passed. I won another gold medal, then another, then another. I built my own empire, one they were never part of. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. A few years after I retired from running, I was called up. My business thrived as a sports coach. I handled everything from training to sports therapy. So imagine my surprise when I was asked to conduct a psychological evaluation for a prison inmate. When I checked the patient's name, I froze. It was Alex. I knew immediately. This was my chance for revenge. When I arrived, Alex's eyes widened in shock.
So you're the one sent to evaluate me? Tell them I'm fine.
I just laughed. Then I turned to the guards and said, "He's mentally unstable. He's a danger to himself and others." I made sure they sent him to solitary confinement, claiming he was a risk to himself. But that was just the beginning. I bribed the wardens to ensure his life in prison became pure misery. The next time I checked in on him, he was doing all the grunt work in the prison. What happened?
He managed to make an enemy of everyone here. He started by telling people that unless they were top of their class at school, they were beneath him and not to talk to him. Naturally, no one took to that well.
What came after was Alex being trodden down until he finally understood that he wasn't special. He was basically a slave to the other inmates. He ran messages from one person to another. He cleaned up after them. He served them their food and cleaned up after them. Any arrogance he started out with was quickly beaten out of him. He looked utterly miserable as he mopped the floor of the mess hall. The once golden child was now completely broken, and I never looked back.